This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to Sports Spectrum. I am Jason Romano. Today on the show, we have Carson Palmer joining us, a three-time Pro Bowl quarterback. Played in the NFL for 13 years, 14 seasons with the Bengals, Raiders, and Cardinals. The first overall selection in the 2003 NFL draft by Cincinnati. He had 46,247 career passing yards, 294 career passing touchdowns. Quite the accomplished career for Carson Palmer. So we're going to talk to him in just a little bit, but want to tell you a couple ways you can get in touch with us. First, make sure you check out our website, sportspectrum.com. That's the home base for all of our content here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum, where we have devotionals, we have different interviews that we've done with the podcast. In fact, every single podcast is there on the website. And then we have stories, different stories on the intersection of sports and faith with athletes and coaches and other people in the world of sports talking about Jesus. And I love our website. I really do, because there's such a large amount of content. You can really get lost for hours, and every single story is intentionally written to point people back to Jesus. So you need to check out sportspectrum.com if you haven't done that already. You'll also find our podcast network there at sportspectrum.com. We have a show now, a network of shows, including this show, which is the founding show of Sports Spectrum's podcast network. But we got a couple more, including Table 40, hosted by Matt Holliday, the 8-time MLB All-Star, and his wife, Leslie, and a brand new show called Recalibrated with Mallory Brown hosting. She's the wife of Donald Brown, and she actually leads our women's ministry here at Sports Spectrum and our parent company, Pro Athletes Outreach. It's called Recalibrated. So brand new shows happening right now on the Sports Spectrum Podcast Network. We're going to grow and expand more shows in 2021. So you need to check out the Sports Spectrum Podcast Network. It's available at sportspectrum.com. If you want to reach me directly, you can actually email me any guest ideas or story ideas for any of our shows, whether it's this one or Recalibrated or Table 40, or maybe it's a story for our website. You can email me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com, and get in touch with me, jason@sportspectrum.com. And today's show with Carson Palmer is presented by Compassion International. And because of COVID-19, there's children around the world living in poverty. And the issue of food has gone from hunger to a worse state, starvation. The pandemic has magnified their needs, and these kids and these families are in crisis. So we're partnering with Compassion International to help kids in poverty all around the world, meeting their basic needs like food, clean water, education, so they can not only survive, but reach their full potential. Every single kid in Compassion's program is also discipled in the Word of God and is offered the opportunity to say yes to Jesus and begin a journey with the Lord. So join me today by going to fillthestadium.com, clicking Give Now, and helping release these kids from poverty in a very dire situation. Check out fillthestadium.com. Carson Palmer is our guest today on Sports Spectrum, and as I mentioned before, a very decorated NFL career. 3-time Pro Bowler, played with the Bengals, the Raiders, and the Cardinals. Of course, had an amazing career at USC, where he won the Heisman Trophy and was the first overall selection in the 2003 NFL draft by the Cincinnati Bengals. Carson is also an advocate for Compassion International and Fill the Stadium, and we're going to talk to him about his involvement with this amazing initiative. But we also talk a lot of football and a lot of Jesus here with Carson Palmer. This is an awesome conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it. With Carson Palmer, Heisman Trophy winner, former NFL quarterback, joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. Carson Palmer, welcome to Sports Spectrum, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm going to be completely transparent here for people, because why not, right? We've been trying this Zoom thing for 20 minutes to get it right, and for some reason the technology hasn't gotten it right. So we figured out a way, though, and we're still talking. Isn't technology so much fun, Carson?
Oh, it's so fun. I actually spent probably like 2 hours yesterday morning. I've got 4 kids in 4 different classes going to school online, and trying to navigate dad, and just every 5 minutes. And it's just anybody that has a kid that's in like third grade and up can, I'm sure, sympathize with me, but man, remote learning is not as cool as it sounded or we all thought it might be at first. It is time to get back to school.
4 kids. What are the ages there? What are the grades?
So I've got twins that are 11. I've got a 9-year-old and I've got a 4-year-old. So I got my hands full.
I'd say so. Retirement doesn't sound as glamorous as it might initially sound, huh?
Retirement? What's that?
Exactly. It's just transitioning to the next thing, right?
Exactly. It's from one career into the next one. And I was much better at football than I am at being a Zoom dad.
That's so funny. See, that's real life right there too. I think people realize, a guy like Carson Palmer, he played in the NFL and, did well for himself. And now it's transitioning to life after. And nope, he's still a dad trying to navigate the Zoom world and the remote learning world, just like the rest of us are. I can't believe it's been 3 years since you last played an NFL game. What do you miss most about playing? It's got to be fascinating when you turn on a game on Sunday and I would think, maybe you don't miss the pain, but you're seeing those guys play. Many of them, the guys that you still played with are still playing, or that you once played with are still playing. What do you miss most when you think about your career and watching an NFL game today?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the game now and love Sundays. We've been doing church online and live streaming church, and then football starts right after Pastor Mark gets done, and I still love Sundays. When I was playing, my whole Sunday routine was so great. I would wake up at the hotel. When I was playing with the Cardinals, we stayed at a really nice hotel downtown, a really nice Westin. I had my everyday routine. AQ Shipley and I and Drew Stanton, a couple teammates, we would go get breakfast in the morning. We'd get our coffee just the way we wanted it. We'd ride to the stadium together, listen to the same music. You go through the stadium and through security and you say hi to all the folks that you've seen for so long and go into the training room, jump in the hot tub, get the blood flowing. It was a routine. Go out on the field, jog around a little bit, get a little sweat going, go back in, put on your pads, go back. It was such a great routine. And then you get to play and it's just playing football. And it's only 16 games and hopefully 4 preseason games, then hopefully the playoffs. But I don't miss all the rest of it. All the especially as I got older, all the stuff I had to do just to stay healthy and all the stuff I had to do just to feel as good as I possibly could on Sundays. It was draining. It was physically and mentally draining. So I really do miss the Sundays, but I don't miss much outside of Sundays. And like I said, it's only 16 during the season. I missed out on so much as, my kids' early childhoods. I missed out on all the first games and the first pass and, whatever that was. I missed all the practices, all the games, all the performances, my daughter's ice skating performances. And I after 15 years, I just kind of looked at my wife and we were just like, you know what, it's time. It's time to move on. I probably could have got another year in and played one more, maybe 2, especially now when you see some of these guys like Brady playing into his mid-40s. But I just was ready to move on and find a new challenge and was really kind of tired of missing out on all the videos I would watch that my wife would take while she was at the sporting event. And send it to me while I was at the facility, sitting in meetings or watching film or working out, whatever it was. I just got to the point where I didn't want to miss any more of my kids' stuff.
Describe what it was like later in your career to get yourself ready to play. You say you don't miss all the things that you had to get ready to play, as your body got older. What exactly were you doing to do that? Like, what are some of the things that you had to go through just to be ready to play on game day?
When you're 22, 23, 24, fresh out of college and first couple of years in the league, you just don't have the bumps and bruises. Your body recovers so fast. And at a really young age, I was around some great veterans, a guy named Reggie Kelly, who was a tight end with me in Cincinnati for a number of years, Jon Kitna, who was another quarterback with me in Cincinnati. And these guys from the jump were like, man, listen, this is what you do. This is how you be a pro. You make sure you go and see a chiropractor twice a week. You make sure you get your body worked on, a deep tissue massage. it's not like walking into a spa. I mean, these are, you're walking into a strong woman or a strong man's, massage spot, and they are digging and grinding and using their elbows. And, it's not a comforting, relaxation period. It is getting the knots out. But I started that regimen early because these older guys that were in year 8 and 9 and 10, probably at the time when I was in my first year in the league, were like, listen, this is what you do. You start doing it now, and you create a habit so that when you do really need this and you're 29 and you're 33 and you're 35, when it is, it's so important for you to get this done for your body, you've already created a habit. You've already gotten your body used to being worked on like that. And so as I got to 34, 35, 36, 37, my body just always hurt. And you spent so much time. I mean, I would go into the stadium and the facility at 5 a.m. during the week, go through your normal work day, probably get done at 4 or 5. I'd then drive out to a guy that did a bunch of body work on me, a guy named Dave Matthews, who lived 20 minutes in the opposite direction. I would drive out to his facility and get worked on for another 2 hours. And then before you know it, it's 7, 8 o'clock at night, and you're driving home and your kids are already in bed. And that's the kind of stuff I was talking about. That's the stuff I had to do so much extra to feel as good as I could on Sundays and to manage. And really it became managing little injuries, broken bone in my thumb that I had to deal with and had to get worked on all the time, pulled muscles, torn ligaments, whatever it was. When you get to that point, when you're 34, 35, 36, it's just another job on top of your job. You go into the facility and do your football, and then you got to find somebody that can get you, like I said, feeling as good as you can on Sundays. And that really starts to wear on the older guys, and it really did wear on me.
Carson Palmer is joining us here on Sports Spectrum, the former NFL quarterback. This is the intersection of sports and faith here on our show, and I know your faith's important to you. Can you kind of share maybe the moment when you said yes to Christ and kind of how that journey, that Christian journey, that walk with the Lord began?
Yeah, I grew up in the church. I grew up, my mom drugged my younger brother and I to church every Sunday, forcing us to put on a collared shirt and a button-down shirt and khakis and tuck our shirt in. And I was hesitant always. And up until probably my sophomore, junior year in high school, I started realizing really who God was, and just realized that I needed him in my life. And I had been, like I said, I had grown up in the church and been around it. But I didn't really realize the importance of a relationship with Christ. And so it was right around that time, probably junior year, I started getting recruited to play college football, and I really wanted to play college football, and I had dreams of playing in the NFL. And I realized at a young age, like, hey man, if I have God on my side, I can be as good a football player as I want. And so selfishly, I wanted God in my life because I thought he could help me be a better football player somehow, some way, be a better person.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my first intro, and then going to college and meeting the professional athletes outreach group and getting kind of, jumping into that group of men and women at USC was where I went to school. And at the time we had a really good group, and I just continued to learn and continued to grow. And, the more people I met, whether it was throughout college or my first couple of years in the NFL, Jon Kitna, I brought his name up a moment ago. He was on fire for God. It was my rookie year. He was the quarterback before me for the Bengals. And I just was around him and realized, man, I want what that guy's got. That guy's on fire for God. That guy has Jesus in his heart. Everybody knows it, and I want that. So I've just been really fortunate and blessed to be surrounded throughout, from my childhood, college, and into my pro career. I've been surrounded by a bunch of really, really strong Christians, and a bunch of really smart and successful individuals that have God in their heart. And I was very blessed. God was all around me in so many different people. It was, I don't know if it was dumb luck or a blessing, And some of those situations, the people you met, years ago, you look back and realize how much of an impact they had on your life. And maybe it didn't seem like the impact was that great at the time, but you realize how impactful some individuals can be. So I was just really fortunate to be around a bunch of individuals that wanted to share who God was and wanted to help out other teammates any way they could. And I just, all those guys and individuals had such an impactful relationship with me. And like I said, I was just really blessed in that sense.
When you think of a guy like Jon Kitna, we've had Jon on this show, and he was always outspoken. And when he would do interviews, he'd wear the hat with the cross on it or whatever. I think he got fined one year for doing that, in post-game press conferences or whatever. But he was never ashamed, and just lived that out. As you got older, did you kind of find yourself taking on that role, maybe in a different way, because everybody's personalities are different, but in that way of being a mentor to a lot of the younger guys from a faith perspective, a spiritual mentor in some ways?
Absolutely. I mean, that, like I said, I walked into a locker room in Cincinnati, and my locker was in between Jon Kitna and Reggie Kelly. And Jon, like you said, I'll never forget, he had a bunch of those hats and, custom made for him. He always had one on. Reggie Kelly was always in his locker with a Bible out, and people coming by asking about God, wanting to argue with him, wanting to know more about this chapter in the Bible, whatever it may be. So I was thrust into, a locker room where God was present, and God is not present in all locker rooms.
Right.
And God was present in that locker room in Cincinnati. And I learned a ton. I mean, Jon had Bible studies at his house. He had Bible studies at the stadium. And like you said, Jon tells it like it is. I mean, he's not going to sugarcoat it. It's not all peaches and cream and rainbows and Care Bears with Jon. Jon keeps it real. And so,
yeah.
I witnessed that. Like I said, my locker was right next to him, and like you said too, Jason, like everybody's personality is different. How I shared who God is to guys that didn't know or had questions is totally different than Jon's route, and totally different than Reggie Kelly's route in getting to whatever that answer is that somebody's looking for, or sharing a story with somebody. And so I think it's so important that we don't try to be somebody else or try to preach like another pastor does, because everybody's got their own personality, their own knowledge of the Bible, their own way of talking to somebody, the way of sharing a story. And so I never tried to be like Jon, because Jon is such a unique, amazing individual. I went about my mentoring process through my own personality. I'm not a big outspoken, rah, hit you over the head with the Bible kind of guy.
Right.
I'm pretty mellow and pretty chill. And I've always been that mentor. And when I was the older guy in the league, I just led my own way and didn't try to replicate anybody specifically. I did steal little sayings that Kitna had, and little sayings that different guys had throughout the years that I thought were just awesome. So I had some one-liners that I would use that I just picked up from guys over the years. But I think it's important that you just need to be you. And when you're talking about something like your faith and trying to help somebody that may be in a situation where they're trying to find out or who God is, or they're fighting some demons, you just need to be yourself and be honest too. Like, look, I don't know, but let me call a couple buddies that I know that chapter in the Bible, and let me get you an answer. Being honest and making sure you're not telling something that's not completely true doesn't happen, because you don't want to confuse anybody. But you just need to be yourself and then pray too. I mean, I pray all the time when I've got stuff coming up. Just, hey, God, speak through me. When I can't find that word or I can't find that verse, speak through me. And it's amazing when you do pray for help like that, how some of the things that God puts in your mouth are pretty amazing stuff that I wouldn't have come up with on my own. You can just tell he's there with you.
Mm. I wonder too, because your position is such a public position, and you're starting quarterback for a team, and everybody's watching you, watching how you act, watching how you lead, watching how you treat people, watching how you talk. And of course, as a follower of Christ, there's a witness there that you want to have. Was that a struggle at all for you during your career? Maybe even coming in? I mean, having a guy like Kitna there is a perfect model to watch, but was that a struggle for you, knowing that this is such a public position that anything you say is going to be scrutinized and headlined in the papers and on the web? Were you aware of that?
I was definitely aware of it. But growing up in Southern California, going to USC and being the starting quarterback from my true freshman year in Los Angeles, it was just kind of a baptism by fire. I mean, I learned at 19 or however old I was, my true freshman year, right away. And it was great experience for me, because then I got to the NFL and I go to the Bengals and I walk into my first press conference, and I'm used to being in press conferences in LA where the room has 60 or 70 journalists in it and cameras, and we're talking Los Angeles. Then I go to the Bengals and there's like 4 reporters in the room. So it was from going from college to the NFL, it was an easy transition. I was used to, being in Los Angeles, spotlight, LA Times, every little thing, like you said, gets scrutinized, and every play and every pass. And then I go to the next level up from college to the NFL. I had a really easy and smooth transition. And it was great to learn all that at such a young age and make mistakes and say things you shouldn't have said at 19, 20 years old in Los Angeles. But it was a great lesson for me throughout my 15 years in the NFL.
Carson Palmer is joining us today on Sports Spectrum. One of our great partners and sponsors with Sports Spectrum is Compassion International. I tell people all the time, Carson, they're the most trusted child development ministry in the world. The work that they do is so good. And right now they're doing a great thing with this Fill the Stadium initiative. FillTheStadium.com is the website. Tell us about your involvement with it and why an initiative like Compassion and Fill the Stadium was so near and dear to your heart to say yes to and say, I want to be involved with this.
Well, it all started, I had reached out to Steve Stenstrom, and I think the Fill the Stadium initiative is one. I think he's kind of the driving force behind it and came up with the idea. But I called him. I was like, "Hey, Steve, I know you got kids. We're looking to go on a mission trip. What do you think?" And he's like, "Oh, here it is. Through Compassion, I did this, this, and this." And he wrote it all out for me. I had it all dialed in. We were getting ready. We were finally at the right ages for our kids to take them on a mission trip and get to see the other side of the planet and get to spread the word of God and go. I didn't even know what we were going to do at the time. We just needed to take our kids to go build houses, dig wells for fresh water, whatever it was. And we started putting this trip together, and then COVID happened. And I was like, oh man, let's push it back till next year. Let's push for next spring. And I had talked to Steve a little while after and, said, I'm bummed out, but thanks for all your help. We can't go on the trip right now. We need to postpone the mission trip. And he had just kind of started thinking about, man, all these kids that typically get sponsored, kids with Compassion that get sponsored, now they're not going to get sponsored because, a lot of the fundraising happens at Sundays on Sundays at church. And now people aren't in church. You're having to go online. So there's just so many kids that were getting looked over and forgotten about. And he came up and I know Ken McKinley's been a big part of it too. And they came up with the idea that, there's all these football stadiums that are now sitting empty. 70,000 plus stadiums where you can't go and watch a game. What if we could find a way to raise money for 70,000 kids and virtually put 70,000 kids into a stadium? But in doing so, sponsoring each one of these kids. And so I think the ball just kind of got rolling from there. And you look at a family of four, if a mom and a dad want to take their two kids to a Chargers game or a Raiders game and buy them a soft pretzel, a hot dog, and a Coke, it's roughly around $500 for a family of four. So there's all these families that aren't spending that money, that income on a family weekend or a family Sunday going to a game. That $500 that you would spend going to the game can sponsor a child for a year, and you can fill this stadium up. We can sponsor 70,000 kids is what we're trying, hopefully more, what we're trying to sponsor. And when you think that $500 you would spend on a Sunday game for your family can go and pay for a child's food, shelter, clothing, pay for ministry to that child so that child can find out who God is and have a relationship with Christ.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it. The 70,000, as they say, empty seats represents a child who's in crisis, and that's what I've been hearing from talking to Ken at Compassion. You also mentioned Steve Stenstrom. I want people to understand if they don't know who that is. He's a former NFL quarterback, but he's also my boss. He's the president of Sports Spectrum and Pro Athletes Outreach. And when I think about this Compassion initiative, Carson, I mean, we're talking about kids that are in poverty, and it's, Ken was telling me that this issue has gone from hunger to starvation. The pandemic has just magnified the needs of these kids and their families that are in crisis. So I guess for you, what's the why behind this? Obviously you have your influence and your name and the fact that you played for so long, but what's the real why behind why Carson Palmer wants to be involved with Fill the Stadium?
I think it all stems. My wife and I just have a soft spot in our hearts for kids that didn't grow up the way we grew up. My wife Shaylin and I both grew up in a two-parent home. Neither of us had lavish lifestyles, but our parents provided for us what we needed and found a way. If we needed a new pair of soccer cleats or whatever it was, they found a way and provided for us. And there's a ton of kids, and we've always, throughout wherever I've played, we've always been involved with the local children's hospital, like the Phoenix Children's Hospital in Arizona, the Boys and Girls Club in Cincinnati, wherever we've been, we've just always gravitated towards helping kids. And like you said, this issue that's happening, and why the Fill the Stadium initiative started is because there's so many kids that pre-pandemic had a sponsor, and there was potential to have a sponsor because there was going to be Hillsong United concerts where they talked about it and spread the word. There was going to be church services on Sunday where, people were in there in church and just feeling the word of God and praising God. And then somebody comes on and talks about compassion and they decide to sponsor a kid. Well, all of that just stopped.
Yeah.
And, my wife and I have just, like I said, we've just always had a soft spot for kids, and Compassion. It's a trusted way where if you don't have time to give, but you have money to give, that money is going to the kids. All of that, whatever you decide to invest, however many seats you want to fill in the stadium, that money is going to these kids to pay for food, to pay for clothing. And also, it's also, exposing these kids to the Bible and who Jesus is and how Jesus can help.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where it all really stemmed from, is just my wife and I growing up in a two-parent home and realizing how fortunate and blessed we were growing up and how many kids aren't as fortunate as we were growing up, and just wanting to do something for those kids that didn't have the support that my wife and I had.
Yeah, that's really well said. FillTheStadium.com is the website again for people to donate. They can give $500, sponsors a child for an entire year. It's a really great opportunity for you to pour into someone else. It's called FillTheStadium.com. That's the website, helping children in crisis with compassion. Carson Palmer is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. Real quick, 2 quick questions for you. My last question will be faith-based, but this question is more football-based because I'm just a football fan in general. I once asked this to another couple quarterbacks that have been on the show. Do you have a favorite play that when you knew coach was calling this play You smiled, you lit up, you were like, all right, this is the play. And do you remember what the play was called?
Well, the play was called, I don't know how many, I think I was probably in 5 different offenses throughout my career. So the play was called 5 different things, just because terminology changes and every coach has a different way to call a formation, a protection, a route concept. But my last stop was Bruce Arians. The concept is 4 verticals. You're sending 4 receivers deep. Nobody's running a curl or a dig or a comeback. They're all running deep. And so in Bruce's system, which is now being run in Tampa, it was trips right, 76, jet. And jet told all 4 receivers what they were doing. So that was always, I love throwing the ball over people's heads, because you had one guy who was running just a straight go, where you just take a big, long 5-step drop and chuck it up over the top. But you also have a receiver on an over route and then a receiver on a seam route. But everybody's going deep. And so in another system, it was called 2-jet, would be trips right, 2-jet, all go. But we called it Delta in Bruce Arians' offense. And just my favorite play. I loved getting a single high look to rip one of those seams in there, or a cover 1 look where everybody's playing man. And I got, a little tiny DB on Larry Fitzgerald, and I can take a big 5-step drop, look the safety off, and throw a big high arcing ball down the sideline. That was my go-to.
I love that. When you watch the Buccaneers right now and you see Brady in that offense, and you can probably call out almost every play before it actually happens based upon having played in that offense yourself, right?
No, I'm not. I don't have it like that anymore, unfortunately. No? Before, they do such a good job, and Bruce has always done such a good job not letting you defensively pick up on little things here and there. Okay. Before the play, you can't tell what it is, but there's a bunch of plays when I'm watching them play that post snap, after the quarterback has the ball in his hands, you can see the concepts developing. But they're also doing quite a bit of stuff that I think Brady brought over from New England that he really liked, and obviously had a lot of success in his New England days. So it's a really, it's a hybrid offense of a lot of the same stuff that Bruce has been doing since he got in the league 30 years ago. And then a lot of the same stuff that you saw Brady doing in New England, especially with Gronk and some of the option routes, and some of the stuff where you see Gronk outside on a DB, where he's kind of lining up as a receiver. Like, that's all stuff that they were doing in New England forever.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I love talking football too. We could do a whole podcast on football, I'm sure, someday. My last question to you, Carson, and this has been a fantastic conversation. We asked this question to all of our guests. I'm curious where you are. We kind of started with the pandemic and kind of the state of where we are as people, and where you are as a dad and a husband right now. But what's the great lesson the Lord is teaching you right now? What's he showing you? What's he teaching you in the season of life that you're in today? What's God showing you?
I think God is testing my patience. Since school started at home, and now I've got my 4-year-old's not in school. I mean, he does a silly little Zoom meeting a couple times a week, but he's a free for all. So he's running every which way and trying to annoy all the other kids. And I've got 3 different kids sitting at 3 different tables, and just my patience. I mean, I feel like there's probably so many dads in the same boat as I am right now, where you've got a Zoom call or a podcast you got to do, or whatever it is, a conference call, whatever it is you do for work. And then you've got one kid yelling your name over here, 2 other kids yelling at each other, and they're all supposed to be in class. And I'm also not the most technically savvy individual. So my kids come to me with their Chromebook and there's something going on with this, or their email, and they forgot their password. And I really there's so many times during the day right now, I just have to just give me a second. Breeze, my daughters, give me like 5 seconds. And I just need to exhale and realize, just be patient, because I'm not a patient person. I want what I want, and I want it now. And, this pandemic has really kind of changed all of our home lives. And so there's multiple times I lay in bed at night and I'm just getting ready to go through who I want to pray for, what I want to pray about. And the first thing that comes up all the time is I'm just praying and asking God for patience. Because if you just can take a step back sometimes and just take a breath, and like I said, when two kids are arguing and one kid can't log on and one kid's got this, it's just like, if you can just take a big deep breath and just realize everything's okay, we're gonna get this under control. But and that's just a struggle for me. It's just I'm not patient, and it's something I'm praying for. And I think God is probably testing all of us right now, with kids at home and work at home and all the things we have going on right now because of COVID.
Yeah. It's really well said. He is Carson Palmer, the former NFL quarterback, 3-time Pro Bowler. And again, the work with Compassion International and the Fill the Stadium initiative. Check out fillthestadium.com to donate and help these children in crisis. Carson, thanks, man. Thanks for being here on the show. Glad we were able to get it done, and we'll connect again soon, I'm sure. All the best to you.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me. And let's do a football only one at some point when you're ready.
Absolutely.
That's what you need. Absolutely.
You got it, my friend. And many thanks to Carson Palmer, the former NFL quarterback and Heisman Trophy winner, for joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. I really love the football stuff. Trips right, 76 Jet, Delta with Bruce Arians and his time in Arizona. Like, that to me is just awesome. Like, I could listen to that kind of conversation all day. But I also loved his heart for Compassion International, our sponsors today on the show, and Fill the Stadium, helping these children in crisis. I mean, that's what it's about. Lending your name to a cause that can really make a difference. And Compassion needs our help. These kids need our help. Basic things like food and clean water and education, hunger, starvation. That's the situation right now with these children in crisis. And so thanks to Carson for being here on the show. Thanks for his involvement with Compassion International. And again, go to the website, fillthestadium.com to donate. You click that Give Now area, fillthestadium.com, and you can really help release children and their families from poverty. fillthestadium.com. Thanks to Carson Palmer, and thanks to you for listening. Make sure you check out our website again, sportspectrum.com, and then check out all of our podcasts on the Sports Spectrum Podcast Network and subscribe today. Table 40, Recalibrated, Football Sunday, and yes, this one, Sports Spectrum. Subscribe right now to all of our shows. Listen, our goal here is to bring Jesus back into the conversation and see his name glorified through sports. And so we're going to continue to do that by God's grace. As the resources continue to come in, we're going to continue to bring you these stories, these conversations, and all of the content that we're producing here at Sports Spectrum. We love you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe.